This particular Mylar, as you can see from the finish, you've really got to be careful with it. You can scratch it, you can mar it. If your preparation is not impeccable, it's going to strike through your surface of this stuff. People ask me, do you line it? Yeah, line it. If nothing else, line it so you see how poor your preparation was before you hang this stuff. You get a last shot to tweak your prep. You're going to find yourself inventing little tools to deal with this. What you're seeing me do now is basically use clips as paperweights. Whether you have bean bags or you have soft tools that you can put out on your table to deal with this. If you follow through that handout I gave you, the way I approach hanging this stuff, when I go point to point, I hang this similar to a grass glove job. So I have a balanced effect. That way, if you do seem to have like a sense of paneling or seaming, everything is uniform. It's critical when you're hanging this stuff to have a very good quality level or a good quality laser. The first piece that you hang on plumb has got to be dead nuts on. If it's dead nuts on and your trimming is right on, the stuff will hang good and you'll get a good seam. If it's not, if your plumb line's off, you'll drift, your wire edge or overlap. And the way I install it, and I'm hoping this presentation will generate some more feedback and probably give me ideas I didn't think of when I was in the middle of this. This was a job that would normally take maybe a day and a half. I spent 4 days on it. Oh, I did a day a wall. It moved real slow. There was no sense going fast. But by the time I got to the fourth and most important wall, I was pretty good at this stuff. You know, I had a hand on it. And it's just basically you get more comfortable with this stuff and you get more confident when the more you deal with it. But you're basically inventing ways and methods to deal with this. I'm going to do a small piece here, maybe about 3 foot long. We're going to put it up on this board behind us. One of the tricks that I found, I did all kinds of testing, and you do too. This is maybe not your typical Mylar. This is a Mylar. It's a tough one. When you have you're on the job like this, test. Find a wall someplace that's not going to be a critical focal wall, and test. Take a small piece, work with it, see what works. What I'm going to show you today may not be what you'll use, but it's one option you'll have in your back pocket when you get on location. The paste that I wound up using was full strength clay, and I used that basically on the perimeter. You're going to use a 2-inch wide foam brush. You're going to lay that on the seams, at the ceiling, at the base. The body, you can roll that on with a bigger foam roller. You can't put a lot of paste on. This is a dry hang, if you haven't figured out, because I didn't say this was a dry hang, but if you can figure out from where I've been talking, this is a dry hang installation. Getting this stuff wet does nothing for you. So you want a dry mix of paste, dry clay. You can blend a little clay in with some 880 or 234 high solids clear for the body of your paper. Take your time with this stuff. Trim it accurately to what you need if you're going to panelize. I'm going to take a piece down. We'll cut it down. I've got a little paste mixed up. It's probably not ideal paste, but we'll see what we get. I use these foam rollers more to see if it would help me with the application of this. You've got, even as this sits here, this paper sits here, you came up here now, you'd see a little pimple that was on this table that I didn't see. So whatever your sweep is, whether it's, you know, hard plastic or a softer one, the softest you can get, the better. This stuff scratches real easy. With your Mylar, the paper, once it starts grabbing, you'll know it's set long enough and it's ready to go. You've got a contact effect. You've got to take your material rolled up like this, start at your ceiling line, and Start sweeping and bringing it down like that while it's in the roll. The first piece is easy. What I have behind here on the board, I'm going to use, but I don't think we have enough tack to give you a good hold down at the seams, but we'll give it a go.
How long do you usually let it set?
When you've got unadulterated paste, you don't need to let it set too long. In fact, you have to be concerned about the environment where you're hanging. If you're hanging in the wintertime when the household heat is on, you're gonna set up fast. So in more humid environment, it'll set up slow. But the trick is it's a thin layer. You can't put your paste on with a brush. You can't put it on with a nappy roller. It'll just leave too much deposition of material. You've got to have a very, very thin film, almost like contact cement, like you were doing a countertop with Formica or something like that. It has to be that thin. Yes, Dave?
You put on the 2-inch around the perimeter at the end?
Yeah, because it's a good idea, Dave, but if you don't put it on at the end, Dave was talking about the perimeter band of clay that I make with a 2-inch foam roller. If you put it on to start, it oftentimes can be dry, too dry, by the time you get to it after you've done the body. So it's a good point he brought up. Fill your body with your 50-50 clay mix, and then come back and do your perimeter band with the clay. This is painstaking, folks. A lot of people don't like to work like this, but it's the only way that I found that I can hang this stuff.
Rich, you didn't have to worry about getting paste on it, obviously. I mean, I'm assuming.
Yeah, you don't have to worry at all about getting paste. And I think maybe.
Usually when we hang these materials, we usually work the faces. By wetting it, the tools slide nicely down. You need to get bubbles and stuff out.
Okay, the point that Larry made is when he and his crew hang this material, they take either a sponge or a damp cloth and they break the surface tension on the face of it. That helps their tools slide easier.
And also we sometimes will cover it with cheesecloth, we'll cover the plastic to protect it, or they send us scrapers with Velcro at the end. And both of those work nicer than just a straight plastic. You can actually scar the face of it with the plastic. If you're pulling the bubble out, you can pull it. It actually, when it gets softer with the paste, you can actually damage the face of it with the use of plastic.
All right, good point that Larry has made, and I talked about this in the beginning of the presentation. You're going to invent tools to hang this. You're going to take things you have in your tool bag, and then you are going to look around hardware stores, paint stores, your shop, wherever, whatever looks like it may work, and then change it or tweak it. Larry's idea was to wrap a tool like this in cheesecloth so you minimize or prevent it scratching the surface of this. The other idea is to take some of that Velcro, not the stuff that's got the hooks, but the soft side, and wrap that over the edge of your sweep too.
The other thing, if you're going to take your sweep and use your plastic sweep directly on the Mylar or foil, take some 220 sandpaper and sand the edge of your sweep till it's glass smooth. Because every sweep I've ever gotten at the factory has very fine little aberrations to it. So if you take some 220 and you sand the edge of your sweep first, that makes a huge difference. A sanded sweep and a wet wall is a good combination.
Okay. Phil's point was you get a sweep and you take some 220 sandpaper and make sure that there's no burrs, that it's perfectly smooth. You mentioned one other point about getting your wall wet. Do you want to comment on that?
Like Larry was saying, you wet the face of the material,
Mm-hmm.
that with anything that I'm concerned with, it marring or scratching. There's a lot of vinyls, foils,
Yeah.
wall coverings that have a tendency to want to scratch. Digital murals want to scratch because there's nothing protected against. So as you're sweeping, one hand towel, one hand sweep, towel, sweep, a wet towel, and that lubricates it. But you gotta make sure your sweep is perfectly smooth also.
Okay, one of the things I'm finding up here while I use this loose mix of paste is, I don't know if it's the moisture. I certainly didn't have it that easy when I was doing this job, and I stayed very, very dry. It seems like the excess moisture has actually helped me up here. This paste is a lot looser than what I was using on location. Well, I'm happy that it laid down. There may be something, maybe I'll have to put a little more moisture in my face, I don't know. But you gotta remember one thing too, this is a small test piece. When you're in the throes of this, and you're there by yourself, you gotta figure out a technique and a routine. That's basically what I do. I have a helper with me, and when you've got a full width panel that's 8 or 9 feet long, sometimes that's a good idea. When you're setting your edge, and that helper can hold this out, the left edge out here, and you're setting the right edge, sometimes it's helpful. After a while, you get more comfortable with the material, and taking that full width panel to the wall gets a lot easier over time, and you can virtually do it without a helper, and you just basically kind of. A lot of times, you know, Dave was asking me about, do we put the clay on before or after? A lot of times you need to butter that top ceiling line so it doesn't dry in. So you've got a little grab to set that, because you want to be able to run that top edge of the ceiling line there and hold as you start to bring it down. As you bring it down, you're sweeping out. Questions?
Well, you were, I don't know, comment or question, but you were saying how that second piece, the first piece isn't too bad, you have to make sure it's plumb on the line.
Which we didn't do here. I was going to set up the
Right, no,
labor,
that's-
the
yeah,
level,
Yes.
but it's not that critical here. When you're on the job, it is.
Right, but that second sheet, and anyone that has it, you're butting up to.
Mm.
If you start bringing it down and you get down 2 feet, and it starts going off, so it starts to overlap or miss the seam a little bit. I think your point was, and you made it here, is you can't pull the thing back up and reset it.
You may
So you have to get that top foot or 2 feet perfect.
Yes, yeah, that's my point. That's my point, and that's the way I did this job. You really, this blend of paste here is a lot wetter than what I used. Let's see what kind of release time we've got.
Nope.
So this is what you run into. You pretty much got to set it and forget it.